Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
I mean, is Kate Middleton dead? I don't know. So there was a movie we were talking about earlier, though, I wanted to bring up because, we're going to probably talk about another movie from last time. But I was about to ask David, and David was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I had to stop before he answered the question. David, have you seen Dead Man's Curve?
Well, I don't know if I've seen that, but I was literally just talking about Dead Man's Curve, the song. So, like,
really?
it was a sync. So I was like tripping out on it. Yeah,
Weird.
like so.
I thought you might have seen this movie as a shot in Santa Cruz.
I may have seen. Oh, I may have seen this movie.
Wow,
It's
and
shot in Santa
Kate
Cruz,
Middleton kind of looks like Felicity all of a sudden here, but yeah, the dude from Scream, the girl from Felicity. It's like one of these movies for East Coasties and Midwesterners, shot for the most part on the West Coast, but with like a couple sprinkles here and there for the most part. And it's about these university kids who they're failing. So I think they kill their roommate and make it look like a suicide so that they can all get A's.
Oh yeah, I remember. I've seen this movie. I saw this movie. This is an old movie.
This is like 20 years old now. Yeah, 2000.
Yeah. Isn't that also the Dead Man on Campus? Isn't that the plot for Dead Man on Campus?
I saw that in the theater. It was so bad, and yeah, it was kind of funny at the same time. But yeah,
Dead Man on Campus.
Saved by the Bell. Come on,
pretty sweet movie. But with this one, like they have to buy Smith's CDs and prove that their roommate looked like they're like, all right, we'll set it up, make it look like he bought a bunch of Smith CDs just right before this all happened.
Just to prove that they're gay? What?
He was listening to this. Hey, I was listening to this.
No, it's in Marilyn Manson's autobiography. He has the test to see if you're gay or not, and like more than half the questions involve the Smiths. Like if you're at a urinal and you got your hand on your dick and the Smiths are playing, it means that you're gay. It's things like that. If you
so it could just be like happenstance.
yeah. But I want to say with Dead Man's Curve that was a Jan and Dean song. So the other day I went going through the bins of at the record store by my work, and I came across like a Batman record of Jan and Dean. So it's like Jan and Dean like making fun of Batman. It's like Batmobile lost a wheel and the Joker laid an egg or whatever. But it's actually really funny and it's really good. And I laughed out loud several times while listening to it. But I also have Jan's autograph. And so like that was when it was at the fair Jan was playing. I don't know if you know the story of Jan and Dean, but like so there's a synchronicity I think that there's actually a movie made out of it that really emphasizes it, but they were famous for Dead Man's Curve. So the song Dead Man's Curve, Jan gets into after they do that song and it's a hit, Jan gets into a terrible automobile accident and basically ends up mentally handicapped. And so they had like a Milli Vanilli incident where it was like they were playing like a recording of him singing from before and he was like lip syncing to it, and then like it went off, like there was a problem with like the reel, and so like the whole crowd just like booed and was like, oh, this is lame, you're faking it. And then years went by after that and Jan learned to sing again. He sang quite well later in time. And so I met Jan and I got his autograph. It's like with a big marker and it's all big. It is Jan across the thing. It's like it's like so good. But anyway, yeah, there was a synchronicity involving Dead Man's Curve, and then I don't know if in the accident it was literally like a dangerous curve on a highway. Like I feel like that's what they showed in the movie. But I don't know. I'd have to look into that again.
They also had a lot of like beach cliff stuff. I have to rewatch it now. I'm gonna watch that while we think about the swimmer. But yeah, what do you say?
I just feel like there's something very efficient and something that I really appreciate about the names of roads that self-identify with, like, you don't have to put a sign that's like slow down to 24 miles per hour or watch out. Like if it's just called Dead Man's Curve, I feel like if you don't get the message, then I don't know, like there's not a lot else. But imagine if everything else was like that. What if there was like 12 people got shot here since last October Parkway or something? You know what I mean? Imagine if everything got named that way.
I don't know. So that's a complicated one. So like when I was in Brazil, I went and I was like, I gotta go to the death road. Like the route of death, the ruta de muerta. Like that sounds scary, and it's beautiful. I mean, yeah, sure, you can die really easily. And
you're not talking about Devil's Slide. You're talking about something called Death Road.
The Death Road is this crazy road through Bolivia, and it's a dirt road, like in the highest elevation, where you're like hundreds of miles from anything, and it's a one-lane road, and it's constantly dudes in diesel trucks from the 70s, and they're like trying to barely get around each other, or they have to reverse and stuff, and it's bad.
Dude, freaking terrifying. I had that in India traveling in the Himalayas, because you go around a curve and it's like there's no line on the road. So you're not like this is just a road and like, is there enough room? I don't know. But you have to honk around every corner. So you're going around a corner, you have to honk to let a vehicle know if they're coming the other way that you're coming through. So it's just like honking every freaking corner. And every so often I would look off the side and I would see cars. And I don't know how long they've been there, like in a tree or whatever. It's just like it's steep and it's terrifying.
Yeah, so I mean, so but luckily when I was there, they were in the process of starting. I don't think they quite closed the death road yet, but they were in the process of starting to close the death road to general traffic because they have things on gondolas and they have a new road somewhere. But the death road is, this dirt road on the side of a cliff that you can fall off of and end up in a hospital, which I did. And so there's so you have to be really careful. I mean, I was really careful. There's a lot to all these events and everything. But the point is that, I also was thinking to myself, it's not nearly as dangerous as Highway 17 because Highway 17 has all the traffic now. So, like, if you just have a road that's called Highway 17, isn't that like more terrifying? Like,
the guy
Highway 17, the road of death.
The guy who designed the road ended up killing himself, supposedly over guilt of all the people that died on the road that he constructed. And so, I don't know, but I'm just thinking of like,
yeah, it's true.
UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade. Do you remember the bit where they got a fake highway because they just wanted to laugh at this guy picking up trash? So there's like old guys like, go here, trash it. And then there's all these dudes. It's like, dude, I got to tell you, there is no Adopt the Highway program. Like, and he's like, it's ruining the town's economy. We can't stop watching you pick up the car. And he's like, well, what about all the cars driving by? He's like, you ever look in the windows of those cars? And it's just like, they're like, suck it. And then there's like a dude who comes up and he's all bloody and mangled. And he's just like, oh my God, I just lost my best friend on Dead Man's Curve. And he's like, why would you install a dangerous curve on a fake highway? And the guy's like, authenticity. It's good. It's cool.
Before Leslie Knope went all lame and started working for the state.
All right. Well, so oh yeah, and technically hands-free with Fiction Factory, and that would not necessarily make you gay. I don't know. These were the thoughts that wandered earlier. But is Kate Middleton dead? I just wanted to know. I mean, because it seems. Have you heard this? Do you know about this? Americans,
Something's
surprisingly,
going on, man.
some Americans aren't like paying as much attention to this. But I think it's being covered by like everybody all the time. It's just the idea that she's been like MIA since December and in fake photos and everything for the last couple
Well,
months.
was it? There was a publication. I don't know if it was the BBC, but some UK publication, like it, like made an apology for using a fake image of her in the car, the one with like the tinted windows or whatever. They're like, this isn't real. And then the other one has AI all over it. You can see all these really overt examples.
I like Kate-spiracy. I think that's a fun gateway. Like Kate-spiracy is a good gateway drug for like normies.
Gateway drug.
Yeah, a gateway drug. Exactly.
I saw Kate's piracy, and I was just like, she's downloading Photoshop right now, isn't she?
Well, you gotta understand, there's a difference between Kate-gate and Kate-spiracy. Like, we don't have a Kate-gate yet. All we have is a Kate-spiracy. So, like, that's why I think it's fair. But we're gonna be the first to jump on the Kate-gate if we have anything to prove, right?
Well, there's something interesting about this to me that I guess my perspective as a bumpkin American that doesn't really like live in the proximity of, you know, these great sort of this monarchy, but the whole benefit is that they are like living a public life for sort of everyone's observation constantly, and they get all the nicest things, the nicest cars and clothes and furniture and everything, and part of that exchange is almost like being celebrities that can have you shot like more legally, I guess, but that there's very little explanation for why they can't be on TV or on screen. Like there's paparazzi that are kind of assigned to them in a more official way than we've got for celebrities, right? So the fact that we don't have just one photo, like I don't care if she's sick or bloated or whatever. I actually don't care at all, to be honest. So there's my bias on the table, but
I'm not up on this stuff. Was she rocking the boat? Was she like, because you're showing a picture of Diana, and I was a huge fan of Diana before she passed. It's the only time in my life I've ever been like looking at a royal and I'm like, I like this person.
Aren't they both commoners?
Well, Diana was the great granddaughter of Officer Spencer of the Scotland Yard, who was a somewhat like, he was of royal stock, but more importantly, he was like a bloodhound. You know, he's a detective. During the Jack the Ripper cases. And Jack the Ripper cases have long been associated with probably a royal, maybe like the actual royal that should have been the king at the time. You know, like
it was Lewis Carroll. We all know that. No, I'm just kidding. There was a conspiracy theory that it was Lewis Carroll, but it doesn't work. The timing, he would have had to have been killing people like in his 80s or 90s or something. Just I don't know. It's possible. But
there's belief that it was Prince Albert Victor, you know, like amongst some of the characters. And so if it was one of the princes that were mentally deranged yet like firstborn or something like that and kept from being the king of England, there's a whole bunch of conspiracies that have existed since the beginning of the Jack the Ripper cases, and they're not any more substantiated than blaming the Freemasons, right? Like the fleet, like every
he didn't do that.
I'm saying it's the royals, Thomas. Calm down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you did do that on purpose. I didn't realize.
No, yeah, the York writer probably chill actually in this particular circumstance, and then, but it's kind of like I'm getting a very American Psycho thing with the British Royals. The British Royals is better than the American Psycho because they're like, dude, stop killing people, and they have to like patch walls and have everything ready in the morning and have a dead prostitutes like pimped nearby. But like, he did it. I don't know. It was like they have to make up all this stuff to hide for a royal, and not that they want to do that. That's just what your job would be in like 1600s, 1800s.
You know, right? There's the similarities between The Machinist and American Psycho, or not just similarities, but there's like some weird crossover thing, because the idea at the end of American Psycho, right, is that like he's in this thing and he's like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. And it's all something. It's like nobody cares. Like nothing's happening out of this, you know, like I got to return some videos or whatever. It's just like, but then with The Machinist, it's like he's also ridden with guilt in like both movies, but it ends with him in the cell. Spoiler alert. But yeah, so he's just like, and then he can sleep finally. And so there's like, I don't know, it's like it felt to me like there's a running theme, and the same thing is true for Heath Ledger films. It's like they're continuing on like I don't know how they archetype casted these people. It's not just typecasting, it's like archetype casting. It's really weird.
Can we just assume that Kate Middleton is dead? Let's just jump forward and say, like, who's the murderer? Who do you think killed Kate Middleton?
I mean, right. Like, so
Robert Wagner
in Minecraft.
Not that she needs,
Middleton?
not that she needs to be dead. Occam's razor is that they're in a fight right now, like the relationship or something ridiculous. But if she wanted to divorce him or something like that, I don't know. That would be bad optics for the royal family because he's supposed to be the king, she's supposed to be the queen. It's like a PR.
Right. But when they get the stand-in, like the Paul is dead stand-in, they usually have like time to plan it out and everything. So if something like sudden happens, it like takes them a while to figure out a way to like have somebody like, you know, take their place or whatever. So they're probably scrambling to do that.
She was having an affair. He was having an affair with this, like, okay, so like this chick is like the chick he married, right? And this mousy chick is the chick he married, and this mousier chick, like, they don't look that different. It's kind of my point.
Are these his harem?
It just seems kind of like and also like what a boring aesthetic on purpose. Like, we're gonna be boring upper middle class looking British like yuppies that we're gonna look like down to earth butlers. To me, this looks almost down to earth because it just looks like any Nouveau Riche, Palo Alto people. Like, they just look like your average American Silicon Valley celebrity people, right? Like, I feel like that's kind of weird to me. They're like, yeah, this is what we want. That always scares me when anyone trades anything so they can look like Californian suburbans. That scares me. But also, yeah, this mouse lady. They had an affair 6 months ago, a year ago. Who knows? Who cares? I really don't. But the point is that Kate Middleton's been, you know, public with having to deal with the fact that he has affairs. Maybe some transpired from that. I don't know.
It's all speculation.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. But what we do know is that it's been a long time since anyone's actually seen her. And how long has it been? What was I hearing? I was hearing different amounts. I think I heard 8 months somewhere. Is that for real? It's been like.
Well, I guess like there's a photo in December. If it's real or not, who knows? There's some kind of
Get a temperature check. Do you guys care more about where Kate Middleton is or where Shelley Miscavige is right now?
Probably.
What's more impactful?
Oh man, it's hard.
To me as an American, I feel like Miscavige is probably more important, even though there's a little bit of a shelf life situation going on. But with all things equal, let's say Miscavige was also missing for the last, I don't know, let's say 3 years instead of however long it's been now. It's been like what, over a decade or something.
Isn't Scientology are they? So I'm just surprised that in the first place that David Miscavige is like straight. Is he straight? Is that guy straight? Oh my God. I don't know. Why do I care? Sorry.
God only knows. But the idea that she disappeared in 2007, you know, at 46, and she would be 63 today, assuming she was alive, that is pretty interesting. I can't say that that's less interesting than Kate Middleton being gone for a couple of months, right?
I mean, he's still the head of Scientology, and I would argue Scientology is better than whatever the hell the royal family is at this point.
They're both the lesser of the evils. I mean, they're both pretty fucking bad and pretty connected too. So that's.
I'm just saying, if we're doing like celebrity deathmatch, my money is on Scientology.
Okay. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, what do you do if you're playing like celebrity Deadpool and then like you lose a bunch of money, but then it turns out that person was just replaced and like it's a fact? Like, do you have to go back to the people to get your money back? Like, I'm just wondering.
Well, also, if celebrity clones are real, isn't this the time that the royal family would be busting out the big guns? They'd be pumping out these like Kate Middleton clones left and right. Like, here she is dancing. You know what I mean? Like, they'd be doing all of that instead of being completely silent. I feel like this is either that or it's like the ultimate reverse psychology. Like, they want me to think that clones aren't real because otherwise they'd be using one now. And the fact they aren't, I don't know.
That plus, I think the other thing is there's that movie Party Animals with Macaulay Culkin and Seth Green. Have you seen that movie?
You mean
Well, what
party monster?
young
you
or old Macaulay?
I'm sorry, monster, animal. You know these. I find my distinctions. The point is that I'm not a monster, but in Party Monster, there's a scene where they're like, okay, how are we going to become famous? How are we going to make sure people know our names? So what we'll do is we'll go to parties, and then we'll say, "Hi, we're together. This is us. Hi, we're together." Like literally the royal thing that royals do. You know, just like royal who's it, prince, you know, like freaking they're just like they're constantly just like waving around and just being annoying, and then you get lost. You're like, where's my friend, have you seen my friend,
Right.
have you seen my friend?
You know, the premise of this movie, Party Monster, is that these people are acting like they're like really wealthy when they're anything but. And so
Right.
it's like it's living that life even though you don't have it. So there's a sync with Lady Gaga's first album called The Fame, and like her next album was called The Fame Monster, which syncs with Metropolis. But I actually sent The Fame with Party Monster to James St. James, and he like started following me on Twitter. I really like that guy. So that guy is the guy that Seth Green is playing in the movie, who actually wrote the book Disco Bloodbath, which they based the movie on. Super cool guy, super funny. But yeah, so I had a thing too with like some of the club kids from back in the day, like watched that video when I had it on Vimeo and contacted me. And it was really like affirming in this weird way, because like certain people like really did not like that movie because they felt like it wasn't representational of like what they really experienced, like all the times they shared cabs with the main character Macaulay Culkin is playing and stuff. And then they'd be like, you play it with Lady Gaga, especially that particular album, and it's like it kind of like gives a feel to it, like if you just cut out all the dialogue and just leave like that's like the vibe of the thing, like it actually makes sense, you know, the New York club scene.
Wow.
But yeah, I appreciated that. But also like that James St. James like retweeted it and like was like totally acknowledged that it, you know, anyway, whatever. It's just
Point
it's
being
a trip.
that Macaulay Culkin in that movie and Seth Green, they're basically, you know, it's like the Merkel thing. Like you go and it's their way of PR, because now I'm thinking about this. Like I didn't even remember her name. I'll swear. I was like, well, who is Kate something, or it's middle? It's Kate, I don't know. But now I'm gonna remember it for a while, because Kate Middleton, Kate Conspiracy, branded. It's branded for me. I love conspiracy. It's like I could get the T-shirt Kate Conspiracy with like an old.
What
lady.
about what about Watergate? The Watergate conspiracy.
Dude, Watergate, that could happen. That God only knows how deep this is gonna get. Like it could be, but like, yeah, it's starting to sound more and more like a PR stunt than anything else.
Well, I'm actually imagining one of the logical conclusions of this would be like a Clue, but Kate Middleton edition.
Yeah.
Just
Where in the
out
world
there.
is Kate Middleton?
Another good one.
I can't ever talk about this crap without talking about the Prince Harry is Banksy thing, right? Like, what do you think about all that? Because there's all this art everywhere. There was one recently. This was keep calm and wash your hand, like Banksy art that just seems like it's really. He's saying, you know what I mean? Like, what is he saying to his brother? You know what I mean? And also,
yeah, you can know who he is if you want. If you want to know who Banksy is, it's the least suspicious name that's in the credits in the book. That's like the official Banksy book from the UK. It has his name in there.
And what's the name, so we don't have to read it?
I'd have to look it up again. It's been a while, but I had a long conversation with the owner of the Banksy official Banksy store in London. And after a long time, I was like, "Come on, man!" And he showed it to me, and he was like, "Here it is." And it's actually, I believe it's photo arrangement, it's something like that. So if you get that book and you look in it, it's a name that you never heard before. Like he is not a known guy, but there was a rumor going around. It was like the dude from Massive Attack, and then yeah, people were saying Prince Harry, but no, we do. Know, you can know who it is.
Prince Harry came out and broadsided vaccines. He's like open letter to the world, talking about. He'd said some things that were really interesting, that were surprising, right? Like this kind of, I don't know, that he thinks that not all vaccines are necessary, and that it wasn't really like as valuable as people were told that they were. Your average your average post 2024 liberal, you know, but still, that's interesting at all coming from the anti-Prince, right?
I hope he doesn't rely on his YouTube channel for income.
the artist formerly known as a prince. You know, it's like the social media performer.
Dude, so somebody says here, they go, Harry's pissed off because he lost his hair from the vaccines. I don't. Is that what happened?
Or it's like a character. They're like, dude, you got to just play. You know, this is.
Is Harry going bald too now?
No, he's got his red hair, doesn't he?
He's thinning.
Starting.
Oh, is it William?
Like pops.
Right.
Yeah, no, he is. Totally is. Look at that. It's coming in the back there. Oh yeah. Also, what was it? Princess.
Dude, some of those photos.
Tennis coach. You've seen like Princess Diana's tennis coach, right? And to me, he looks a lot more like the tennis coach. I don't know how 23andMe is going to go with the Royals in a bit when they start finding out, but you never know. I don't know. Could be a thing. Okay, whatever. Shelley Miscavige, though, she's kind of cute. She looks like she should be saved. We should save Shelley.
Is this like the last known photo of her? Like she's just been gone for so long. So she was what?
The official story is that she went out for cigarettes and just never came back.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously a powerful woman. You can see in that photo right there. She's probably like pretty strong-minded and willed. And,
she looks like Charlotte Gainsbourg in that particular photo a little bit.
So I get the feeling this person probably helped Miscavige rise to a point, and then he didn't need her anymore. He just needed like to stay in his place, and she was going to constantly like criticize an angle to have influence as well. And he just,
if I'm going to speculate on anybody disappearing or whatever in relationship to Scientology, I'm pretty much always going to assume initially, until somebody proves otherwise, that they were somebody who was going to spill the beans or already was in the process of doing so, and they just fucking got rid of them.
I think she probably reached OT8 and she just lost her corporeal body.
We can't discount that that like Scientology is all true and that she just simply rise to the point of transcending.
There was a cult that did that where they all said that they were going to ascend into UFOs or whatever. What cult was that? Where and then no, there was a couple, and then one of the couple, the woman died, and then they didn't know how to navigate that because they were supposed to be eternal, and they were like, no, she didn't really die. She actually ascended or transmutated.
This is also Heaven's Gate, by the way. That's the exact same story of
they did, but did they have somebody do that before they off themselves?
And
where,
the
like
point
somebody
is,
died
that many people believe it. It probably has some truth in it. I don't know.
Yeah, because they claim to basically be like immortal / eternal, and then the chick died, and then they had to come up with an explanation. It was like, well, she didn't really die. She ascended. She's like an ascended master now. And
that's the same thing happened with them. There was a woman there in Heaven's Gate.
In Heaven's Gate, yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, it happened more than once. The exact same thing. Yeah. Okay.
It was Marshall Applewhite, and I can't remember who the woman was that was at the head of that, but it was that same exact sequence of events.
Dude, you know that
probably send your genitals up to space ahead of time to be there with her.
Right.
It's like a Mormonism, but for your genitals.
No, dude, it's the opposite of Mormonism. It's like the anti-Mormonism.
On the defense over here, this guy. Careful what you say about Mormonism. We have lawyers.
Well, I just mean they breed a lot heavier than they cut off their genitals. There's not a lot of evidence of Mormons cutting off their genitals. It's usually the opposite. It's usually like Mormons are like springing up like bunnies, you know what I mean?
Right. Okay, I got you. Oh yeah.
No, I was just thinking like every time they cut off their genitals, there's like a planet somewhere that's just populated by all the cut off Mormon genitals, so that over time when you die, you get to go back to your planet that's completely filled with all the genitals.
Oh, is this Resurrect Dead on Jupiter?
You just manifested a multiverse scenario that has to exist now. I don't not appreciate it, but don't make me use double negatives again. Okay. Go ahead.
I don't know. Go. You go ahead. I was going to bring up Enoch, but go ahead.
Yeah. What? No. I just. Okay. Well, since you're bringing up Enoch, what are you going to say about Enoch? We were talking about the Enochian alphabet the other day.
I don't know. It's just that thing where people are like, oh, the Mother Mary, she got pregnant, and then she came up with this elaborate story, and then that became the basis of a whole religion. Just her trying to, get out of the
her pregnancy. But how are you gonna?
But you could say the same thing about Enoch, that he ascended, but somebody just murdered this dude, and then they're just like, oh, I saw him. He just disappeared into the clouds. Holy shit, it was crazy.
I never saw him again. It's like Shelley Miscavige. That makes sense. Kinda. I don't know. Do you think
He's the first Shelley Miscavige.
I feel like Enoch is an example of what would you say? The idea that you're supposed to OT8, like we were saying earlier, like it's literally that. He literally has gone OT8 and loses his body and becomes celestial. Like that's so yes, L. Ron Hubbard is Enoch.
Okay, it's a transfiguration all over again. Damn it. Keeps happening.
Oh, that's scary. All right. So the swimmer.
Oh, you want to talk about the swimmer again? But how are we going to talk about it without spoiling it?
No,
I think we're going to spoil it.
Paranoid American saw the swimmer, and I was just like, I didn't care about the rest of these people down here that were watching it. And you guys should have watched the swimmer. You had a week. This was your chance. Now we're going to talk about the swimmer. It's okay. Death of the Salesman Short, we called it.
I do agree that we should not spoil it for anyone that does care about it. I'm glad you guys didn't spoil it for me, and then I went and watched it, and then read the book about it. So it's not like
people in the comments all say spoil. They say it's an old movie. Just go ahead. So I'm kind of
it's 50 years old.
50 years old.
Let's just do it. And actually, I can't spoil it because I thought I remembered the ending better than I think I do. So I can't remember if his wife and children are dead or if they just left him. If his wife left him, what was it?
It's not described either in the movie or in the book. None of that is explicitly said, as far as I'm aware. That there's some hinting that maybe his kid, like. My impression of it is that his wife and his kids maybe died in a car accident, or that the kids died in a car accident and then the wife left them after the fact, because there's a few points in the movie that people offer to give him like a ride in a car, and then someone's like, "Oh no, of course you wouldn't want to do that. I'm so sorry."
No, because he's swimming from pool to pool. Did his kids die in a swimming pool? Like, I don't know. Did he murder them?
No. I think they might have died in a car crash, and that's why he's like so.
The car landed in a swimming pool and they drowned to death.
Like a Donnie Darko situation, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not specific if it's that his kid died or not. Like that's an inference that's being made. It could very well be, which like I always thought that it was that he was like a stockbroker or something that destroyed his life. Like his family left him, and he's been constantly living in a lie, and it's built up to the point where that's all that's left. All that he has.
So the reason it's such a good movie is because you're following along. You're like along for this guy's trip, and you assume the best of him, and part of that is his optimism. He's just so optimistic, and so you kind of and sincere, and you're like you feel this connection to this guy, and then you're like, wait, he's completely fucking delusional. And this idea that you could meet somebody like that, or that somebody could be you could be living in something. It's like the particulars are to the story, but the principle of that could apply to anybody. Just it's basically like never underestimate the power of denial. Like denial can be so profound, and that we could all be existing that way in a certain way. And that's why, will you talk about yourself?
Is that the full
because it could be you?
Because I feel like I still need someone to explain this marketing slogan to me.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like it has to be about, to me, it has to be about the American demon that he's created, because he's trying to be, I'm the successful person. And that successful person displaces himself until his own self basically doesn't exist anymore. He's a shell of a man. But instead of being addicted to heroin or something, he's embodying this illusion that he's a successful, happy person with a family and a house and everything like that. But it's all been taken from him at the end because of that, right? And for a recap for people who don't know exactly, like a full-on spoiler, when you talk about the swimmer, when you talk about yourself, this movie, The Swimmer, is about a guy who swims from pool to pool across his neighborhood until he gets back to his original home, and like everyone's like, oh, we haven't seen you in a long time. And they're very nice to him. But as he gets closer and closer to home, he starts to realize like something is terribly, terribly wrong. And then you find out that his home is essentially,
it's like abandoned, and like it looks like no one's lived there for years, essentially. And even in the short story it's based on, it's the same thing. When he shows up and he wonders, oh, where are the cars at? And it's just exactly like you see here, overgrown. So like, where did he come from? That's my biggest question at the end of this. Like, where did he start from if his house is completely abandoned?
This is what your house would look like in Connecticut after less than a year of being in a mental institution. Like if you just lost your job and everything else, and winter and spring came, by summertime, this is what it's going to look like, right? So there's kind of a time machine vibe to this moment. Like he's arriving. Every time I return home after when I was traveling, like my parents kept my room, and I'd look at my room and be like, wow, it's like a time machine to visit this place after just exactly the same, same electronics on the wall, even if they're outdated or something. He's going through this kind of crazy scenario, and it's tripping him out. It's like, oh, the tennis courts are all left to rot, and where am I? My home is destroyed, right? That's his whole.
Still a pretty nice house. I mean, a little bit of upkeep. You still got a tennis court in your freaking backyard.
Dude. Yeah, but these New English wasps, like
is he dead? Is he dead? People in the comments think he's dead. Is he dead?
He's not dead because everyone interacting with him the entire movie, all these people that are interacting with him are like, we haven't seen you in such a long time, and like they're like eventually even get to the point where they explain to him, dude, you're what are you doing here? Like no one invited you to this party. Like you're a menace to our community. He had lost money for people. Right,
dude, was that what's her name from Play Misty for me in Arrested Development, or am I tripping? No. Is that who is that?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure that so long ago she's not in Arrested Development.
No, that's not the same person I thought it was, but she looks like somebody. She looks like Anne Margaret or something.
Yeah, he meets all the women, and all the men are seeing. He's always been talking and flirting with everyone's wives and having affairs. Just like it gets the vibe across that he was a successful business chauvinist. But yeah, what do you think about the boy? What do you think about the boy? You think the boy is trying to represent his lost son?
Totally. And then he's connecting.
You think he's
dead
because
he feels his connection to his son. Like that. Well, that's the thing is, I thought in my mind that it like I couldn't remember if they were dead, but you're telling me that they don't actually give a complete answer to that. So okay. But yeah, I'm also glad that like I had just recently discussed this movie before you brought it up last week, because when I brought it up with my friend, I was remembering it, as I haven't seen it in so long, but I was remembering it as Steve McQueen, and it's like, no, that's Burt Lancaster, and I was like, all right, Burt Lancaster.
Yeah. You're supposed to feel that way.
I do think that the kid was maybe dead. I don't think that Burt Lancaster was dead in this particular movie. And in the short story, there's another weird anomaly that they didn't carry over into the movie, and that's that it starts out and he calls this like stream of different pools that he's going from pool to pool. It's called like Lucinda River or something like this, right? And in the book, and it's named after his wife Lucinda. And in the short story, Lucinda's at the party at the beginning. Like he's talking to his wife at a party, and then he's talking about, I'm going to name it after Lucinda. Like she's there and other people are seeing her there. So that's one little thing that I guess they cut out. So you wonder, was Lucinda ever around? Like, is Lucinda dead? Did he kill the whole family? Maybe this is like a Kate Middleton situation.
He's in denial. Yeah, it has. Speaking of like The Machinist, it has a machinist quality to it there, that he's delusional. That there's like the degree to which you can project an illusion, like, and that's what I see in the poster. I see it's like a statement at like, you could be living in a completely false reality, and how would you know? Like the degree to which you can experience denial, and the degree to which projection can color the actual world in front of you.
Well, he states that explicitly when he goes and sees the little kid with the empty pool, and he tells him, if you believe in anything hard enough and you convince yourself that it's real, then it becomes real. And that kind of is the statement of the whole movie, I think, is what he tells to that little dead kid.
Seriously, but it's not a dead kid. I think that's like, you think that kid's dead? I think he's
absolutely. I absolutely think that kid's dead, because in the book that house is completely gone and barren, and in this one it's like oh, my parents are gone, I'm just here by myself, let's go in this pool. And then when he leaves them, the kid's jumping up and down at the edge of the board, and he runs over to like save the kid, and he grabs him off the board, and he's telling him like, what are you doing? Don't jump in there, there's no water. And the kid's like, of course there's no water in there. But I feel like that is like the creepiest ghost kid thing to kind of do. So he checks more boxes in the ghost column than in the not ghost column.
Ooh,
I mean,
okay.
when I was a kid, for me, like I related to that kid because I was like, okay, like when I was a kid, there's a lot of times my parents are at work and I'm at home alone,
You
and
might also be a ghost kid.
I'm probably a ghost though.
You
so.
might be. In fact, I thought that a few times about you, Andreas.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, I feel like we all might be like ghosts, and like the AI is using what they know about us. Yeah, it could be.
Right. Well, it would explain a lot about you because you're like, where did you get all this information? It's like you have access to the Akashic records. It's like, are
Ghost
you in
Rider,
between
bro.
worlds?
That like
Yeah.
Andreas is Ghost Rider.
Neither confirm or deny. But the kid, I'm assuming like that he was alive because again, like he wanted to save the kid's life, and the kid's like he knew that he would die if he jumped in that pool. They could have cut that scene.
Because he did that.
They could have cut that scene out and had him jump and be like, "Oh, there's no kid here. Maybe I was confused." Like, and people would, Instead, he has to go save. He physically grabs the kid. He's a corporeal being that he picks up and saves. Like, I got the feeling that this story is all about a real life man. He can't grow up. He has no maturity level. His wife has left him. He's failed his business, and he's meeting this teenage girl. And he's like, "Okay, I'll do it again."
Oh, the one he runs with in the yeah.
I constantly do, this. I will do it again. He meets this girl, and she's like, but he's like, dude, like, she's like, dude, you're like 60, because he's or 40, 50, whatever it is. She's 17, so it's crazy. And she's playing, and he's playing, and then all of a sudden,
now that it's legal, it's crazy.
But she realizes, she's like, whoa, this is like, you're crazy. Like, at a certain point, like she kind of like picks up. So like I don't think I don't think any of these characters are dead. I feel like this is 60s America. America's about to break. This is right before the acid monkey's head movie kind of time.
Mm-hmm.
See, I got such a total different vibe from this movie. My takeaway was that this poor guy had been through the ringer. He lost everything that he owned. He lost his family. His kids probably died in a horrible car. This is me reading into it, obviously. But the story was about how indifferent everyone was because he was at the top of the hill. Literally, he lived at the top of the hill. So he was like looking down at everyone. They ate fancy food. Someone makes a comment that like, oh, your wife, ran you into the, all this debt because she needed the most expensive strawberries or something. So I think that what happens is that he loses everything. Everyone knows about it, and they're playing into this, but they're also showing absolutely no sympathy to this guy, despite the horrible things that he's been through. So that really it's a critique on how this like Stepford sort of, identical house sort of situation where everyone has a pool. Everyone in this damn neighborhood has a pool.
You're so right. It's total cookie cutter, right?
So, and I feel like they're the psychopaths, and he's just trying to break out of this weird psychopath world that he's been. Yeah, he's running with the horse. He's trying to escape this weird mundane world, but yet he's trapped in the mundane world because everything he does in this entire movie requires him to be in a physical realm. He's walking around. He's cutting his feet up on the ground. And one more thing that I think adds credence to his family died in a car accident is especially in the short story, but even the movie, when he comes to the very end of his journey, he has to cross like a 2-lane or like a 4-lane highway. And it's like incredibly busy. And in the movie, it's fairly quick, but in the book, they make a big note that like it takes him like 20-30 minutes to cross from one side to the other, and then he's in the median, and another 20 minutes to get from the median to the other side.
Shit,
and that he's cutting his feet up, that there's broken bottles, that there's like old pieces of tire all over strewn about. Like it is the most neglected part, and that he knew that he was going to have to face this at some point, but that despite everything, even though he knew that, like, I got to get through this. But it really shows how much fear and disdain he's got for the road and for cars in general.
What about the hot dog wagon? Does the hot dog wagon seem like it represents something to you? Because that's where like everything kind of falls apart. He gets to the party and he wants to be like at the center of the party. He swims across the pool.
Right, because what? He built it for his kids, the kids that died. That's the last thing that he's got, and he knows that because at home is empty. So this is the last thing that connects him to his dead kids.
This guy bought a dog wagon. I don't know. The idea of the car scene is big enough in the movie. He is disoriented by the car scene like quite a bit.
And he even offers, he was like, I'll give you $100 for this. And they're like, this piece of junk? And they're like, still no. Haha. Like, go walk your bloody feet home.
Yeah, but he doesn't have $100, they're saying, because they know he doesn't have any money at that point because he's already.
Right, but they're also like, he's literally saying, this is the last thing that I created with my hands with my children. This means like more than money to me. I'll give you everything that I could possibly have. And they're literally saying, no, you can't afford it. And by the way, this thing's junk anyways. Again, I feel like the story is about how all these neighbors are just the most cruel people on the planet to this guy.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Which also I think that there's something to be said for just the way that people are so detached from other people's personal tragedy stuff. Like, it's like no one loves you when you're down and out. So he's coming at it not from a down and out place, and then he's treated a certain way still. Like there's like I don't know, like
right,
they live in this superficial realm, and so there's no like actual like genuine empathy or anything like that. It's just they
live in Connecticut. Connecticut's like that. They're all these cold, waspy people. I mean, in defense of Connecticut, right? Like it's snowy there, and you're trying to be. It's like the Great Gatsby. You don't show off. You kind of try to keep yourself looking like effectual, you know, like okay, yeah,
but have isn't the Great Gatsby a giant show off? Am I missing? Oh no,
Great Gatsby is the bad guy in the Great Gatsby. He's a new money. Right. He's a guy.
Oh, I see.
And he taunts and irritates the old money. The old money is got that much money, you know. The old money is really just nobility. So nobility is trying to have an effectual existence.
Right. So you're talking about everyone else in the Great Gatsby besides the Great Gatsby when you say that. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And similarly in Connecticut. In Connecticut, it's like, yeah, well, our tennis courts are functioning. Our pool is regulated. Our castle is insulated. Like these are the kinds of ways they're looking at it. It's not like, oh, well, we just we're gonna, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like in California, like we have to build this big blah blah. Like, no, it's like we just got the tennis courts redone. It's a different mentality because you're trying to get it to a state of perfection that you already know exists. And this guy comes in and he's kind of like the Great Gatsby because he's like so successful. It's irritating to the other people that are just barely able to keep their castles afloat. And then also he loses people's money, right? That's a big part of it. So to me, I'm looking at it like Patch Adams and all of these other movies. Like he's if you've seen these East Coast asylums that they put you in and they drug you and they electroshock you and everything. He has this disoriented look at reality that kind of reminds me of that. Like he's been through a lot and somehow he's just been released. And that's also happening at that point, right? Because you're elected to be voluntarily in asylums. So it's not really said that he was in an asylum, but the vibe that he gives off that he was in an asylum to me, and also that they want to call somebody. And there's kind of this vibe, like there's maybe people surround like that, because at the very beginning of the movie they call somebody, right? Like the nudist lady calls somebody. It starts out where he goes to the nudist house and like they begin the thing. So people already kind of know this is happening that day, and it seems like it's going to end with an ambulance picking him up at his house, right? That's kind of the vibe.
Since you brought up Patch Adams, I just have to obligatory note that Patch Adams was an associate of the Finders cult. I think the guy's name was David Marion Petty or something like that. But yeah, anytime someone brings up Patch Adams, I just have to point that out.
So Patch Adams, the story turned out to be like largely bullshit. There's like, or that he was not everything they built him up to be, because this is like kind of like
that's kind of what the Finders is.
Film. Okay, yeah, I'm not that. I feel like I saw this in the theater when it came out and was like, yeah, that was all right, I guess. And then it was like, oh yeah, well it's mostly bullshit anyway. And I'm like, okay.
Dude, I saw this movie on like a 9-inch television in a Harry Potter sized like attic room, and it definitely gave it some more terrifying. I don't know, it just felt creepy movie.
He reminds me of the guy that wears the suit with the question marks. It's like, you can get paid by the government.
Dude, swimming in pasta. Like there's so many like proto Pizzagate references in Patch Adams. But okay, you were gonna say something about the Finders cult, the Finders movement. I'm sorry.
The Finders movement. But yeah, there was an interview from Steam Shovel
Press. It was a maneuver. Sorry.
There was an interview with Steam Shovel Press and Marion Petty, the guy that was allegedly like the head of this Finders movement, and he actually claimed that Patch Adams was like one of their contemporaries, I guess. He didn't call him a member, but that Patch Adams like would hang out there, and that they sort of shared the same sphere. And my understanding was that the Finders movement, the DC branch of it, not the Tallahassee aspect, but in DC, it was kind of like those houses that the CIA would set up in San Francisco, where they would basically say, you can just come here, you can do your drugs here, you can crash on the couch, just let us take some notes and maybe record you while you're here.
Right. Yeah. Brutal.
Mm.
Oh man. Oh, hey, but 5 leaves. Thank you very much. Sorry guys, you know how it goes. This is the rules now. Get yourself one of those new memberships. You know who you are.
How do these work now? Is like just the next 5 people that click subscribe?
Yeah, the next 5 people. If you click on the, there's 5 and added, so you can just click on it. The next 5 people get free membership for a month. You can watch all the deleted content, all the members only videos.
Wait, can you? Is it safe to put deleted content up through members only on YouTube?
Debatable. Depends on how you do
It
things.
seems like they would just strike you again. Just be like, we'll take that money and you're out.
No, if you remove, so certain things for whatever reason are allowed, and if you remove like certain content, that's okay. I don't have. I'm gonna put back up probably in a members only the Q Shaman thing with like some of the parts removed, because I think you can do that. And I'll just like what I'll do instead of removing it is I'll just have like a British robot voice dub over it anytime he talks about vaccines. Be like, vaccines are good for you. Vaccines make you feel.
Dude, I played that while you were doing that. While I had to work late, and so I was just like watching it while I was at work, and then like people would come in, and I was just like, well, turn that off, because I just, you have to keep the worlds kind of separate, with that kind of thing. But yeah, I saw most of it. It was pretty good. Yeah. What a trip.
Yeah, he's actually doing a lot of things right now, apparently. Like, isn't he like running for Congress and fighting things? So maybe we'll get him back on. Maybe we'll just do a Rumble stream. I don't know. It's possible.
There's a guy running for some office in Santa Cruz called Michael Oxford, and I was following him on Twitter, and I agreed with all of his views, and I was like, wow, how interesting to have like a libertarian running for something in Santa Cruz.
And he was AI.
But he was a total dick. Like, if you asked him like any like questions that seemed a little like questioning him, he got all mad, and I was like, dude, I'm literally like your demographic in Santa Cruz. Like, come on, man. Just like, you don't have to like, kiss your demographic's ass, but just don't be a total asshole to me. I'm gonna like tell people not to vote for you. But I don't think he made it. But yeah, whatever. It's like, dude, I don't know. Like, I'd like there to be more examples of people who share my political views in Santa Cruz, but I also don't want them to be like total assholes to me. I'm like, shit.
Everyone gets a gun and mandatory psychedelics.
What do you think?
Those are my politics right now.
What do you think about? Well, then you're gonna love Santa Cruz. What do you think about Rechtenwald? Have you enjoyed any of his libertarian?
That's an unfortunate last name.
I know, right? Yeah, but we're gonna probably talk to this guy because he's actually kind of interesting. He has a bunch of interesting ideas. End the Fed, audit and end the Fed to fund all wars, decentralize. President candidate for the Libertarian Party. I don't know. He's pretty chill. He seems like a pretty chill guy. What do you think? The state is a parasite?
Seems all right, but it's almost like voting for your uncle or something. It's like, maybe I don't know. I don't know what kind of following.
Dude, I would love to vote for Uncle Ross Perot still. Like, I still wish I could go back.
Seriously?
And vote for Ross
like,
Perot.
dude, Ross Perot's son, like, that was a funny thing. Like, people were trying to argue. Some people were arguing that he was a potential VP pick for RFK Jr. And I'm like, wait, RFK Jr. is like coming, like, he's in like litigation with the like private equity firms. And like one of the ones that he's in litigation with is like Ross Perot Jr. And I was like, dude, he's not going to like join teams with Ross Perot Jr. while he's in litigation against his private equity. Like, I don't know.
It would be a sweet way to 2 birds with 1 stone. Like, hey, I'll trade you a VP. We just dropped this thing.
Well, he definitely has money and would help finance his campaign. So I think that was what people were hoping for. It was just like, wow, just get a VP with lots of money. But basically, none of the VPs that people are focused on is the one that he's supposedly choosing. So he says it'll be a surprise for people. So we'll see. That's supposed to be announced on the 26th in Oakland of this month. So that'll be interesting news.
So isn't like Trump basically Burt Lancaster in The Swimmer this election? Because
Yeah, pretty much.
you know what I mean? Because like
all the way down to trying to pick up the 17-year-old and have him like, come with me, leave your parents.
I mean, I hate to be like that, but like he's like, I bet you I could swim across all of the pools. And everyone's
I
like,
want the
why?
whole hot dog cart. Give it to me.
Why?
Right. He's actually swimming through the poles.
Yeah, he's just been pole to pole. It's true. And I don't know. It's just like kind of, and yeah, that especially like regardless of whether or not Trump is Burt Lancaster in The Swimmer, aren't we all the Connecticut Wasps? Like if at this election, because we're all kind of like, yeah, okay, like not even like stopping it, not like caring. He's like, all right.
If you eat his bread and you drink his wine, then yeah, you're in it right along with him. Yeah.
I don't know. This election seems a lot weirder than it did last year because it's like, well, obviously there are old people, but and it's kind of like scary that you have to be almost 100 to be in charge, and
right.
It's kind of very humanism centric, right? Like if you're not 100, then how are you supposed to be? You're not immortal.
Totally. What's coming to a head is with the boomers that like television is on its way out. The internet has already taken over. You got Joe Rogan, last I checked, which was quite a while ago, had like 11 million views per show. And like the highest viewed show on television, which was Tucker Carlson, didn't have nearly that much. What was it, like 1/8 or so? It's like doesn't even come close. And you're like, dude, television is like a dying medium. And then it's like they're still acting like there's this relevance that exists with television, and most people are just watching little clips here and there. Like that's like mostly what people are exposed to. They're not sitting down and watching television except for the boomers, and so the boomers are all fucking totally out of touch. And then not across the board, but largely,
Well, what does it mean to be in touch anymore? Because there's multiple touchstones, right? Like if these generations are separated in ways that they weren't 20 years ago. The internet is so much more divisive.
Right. They can be more in touch with just knowing the history of like, they're like, oh, we've been through this before. And then other younger people might not know the pattern. They don't see that, oh, this is another one of these things, like we're over here talking about Ross Perot. Like we experienced that, but like not all the younger people really get what that means. But if you look at it and you're like, dude, like RFK Jr. like months ago was doing better than Ross Perot did in any point in his entire run, like by far. And there's more independent voters than there are Republicans and Democrats for the first time in American history. And like that's a really big deal. Like there's all these giant variables that people aren't seeming to acknowledge. And it kind of reminds me of Trump, where it was like people were just like, oh, there's no way. And I will admit, I was one of those people. I was early on, especially like 2016. I was just like, there's no way. And then I was like, I'm eating my hat right now with a fork and a knife. I'm like fully like, I didn't fucking get it, And so now I'm like, what else aren't I getting? So I'm trying to pay attention to my blind spots there. Cause it's just like, I'm like, oh, I was of the arrogant crowd that was just like, no, not a possibility. He didn't win the popular vote. And it didn't matter. He got elected through the Electoral College and the delegates. But it's like, all the rules change over time. It's like everything's unprecedented. We're looking to what has historically been true. Like that's just going to continue to be true. And it's just not the case. So
Rusty Woodpecker says, hey there, guys from Australia. You know what? That's incredibly chauvinistic and a little racist. I say, hello, women around the world. Hey, ladies. Okay.
Hey. And there was a good point you were making too, David, that and you were saying about the blind spots. I think there's infinite blind spots, but there was also part of that television programming that I guess we all sort of self-aware. We're being programmed right now. I kind of think that might be better versus the weird fragmented alternative that you would have now, because, and this is going to sound simplistic and like a ex-boomer kind of way, but I remember arguments over which like Ninja Turtle could beat up the rest of them. You know what I mean? And it was Donatello was always the strongest Ninja Turtle. But
well,
that
he's got
like
the longest weapon, right?
exactly. But then people would get into fights over no, it would be Leonardo, no, it would be. But now if you were to
It'd
bring
probably
it
be
up, it's
Raphael
like,
because why would anyone else want to fight? Like the other turtles are chilling.
well, first,
Oh,
yeah,
that's a
first
good
of all,
point too.
you wouldn't want to fight, but you'd say like, "Hey, Donatello could beat up Leonardo," and someone's like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. I only watch Space Dandy," and you'd be
Yeah.
like, "There's like just like not even a disconnect, just completely two different worlds that." they
Right.
don't
Well, you could be
interact
talking
in
to
at
somebody
all.
about that, and they could literally be on the Renaissance painters and just be
Actually,
like, "Wait, what?"
Space Dandy gives me so much freaking hope though, because I was really into Tekkaman as a kid, and it was really impossible to get like good 70s anime after a certain point, you know. And now you've got Space Dandy, and Space Dandy is essentially an homage to the classic 1970s style anime, right? So this is kind of resurgence and giving kids something familiar. And this is also like the kids who were into Tekkaman, there's a lot less Americans that even watch that show, but it was apparently really popular in like Portugal, Yugoslavia, Italy, you know, places like that. So now there's a unification happening. The same thing with Top Cat. Top Cat's far more popular in Argentina. So if you try to unite with somebody, you'd be surprised. Like, oh wow, this particular cartoon is what they saw. So you can unify people now with this kind of stuff, right? And Space Dandy's
For now, but we're losing that. That's the part we're losing, which is going to get scary because now you're going to say, "Oh, do you like Top Cat?" And it'll just be like, "What YouTube streamer was that? Or what was that? A Twitch channel? Oh no, wait, was it a TikTok personality?" So now it's not only our media fragmented, but the avenues that we consume the media are also fragmented to where
I'm cool with it though, because originally you had stories told by storytellers. You didn't really care what story the storyteller told. You're like, wow, you know, Nasruddin is coming to town. He's going to tell a story. Like, so it'll get to that. We're going back to that point, and the idea that stories could be, you know, there's different ways of telling the story of Mickey Mouse, right? Like that's going to be awesome, right?
Yeah. There's the Tracy Twyman way, and then there's like the Disney way, and there's every other way. But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Nasruddin is coming to town. That'll be a better way to look at stories. And also Hollywood movies and TV are gonna, like, right now television streaming services have completely they jumped the gun. They're like, all right, well, we got them. So now they're just like, all right, let's move in, let's just put in commercials, we'll destroy everything.
Right.
People are already sick of it and buying Blu-rays, like 20-year-old media basically at this point. So we're about to see, I think, a resurgence of television. It might not happen right now, but it could very easily happen at any moment where television becomes this thing. And you're like, wow, have you seen what's on the television? Because it's like, yeah, no, it's weird. Like you have to watch it when it's on. I mean, I guess you could record it, but at like 3 p.m., if you're watching it, it's engaging because that's the way people watch podcasts. They're used to watching live. So live might feed back into this idea of having a well-presented 24-hour.
The only way they're going to be able to accomplish that is if they do tell you, Andreas, what they're doing with the Capitol Mall, where it's like you have like you basically open it up to the public to do more like because I mean that was like there's like the Tim and Eric like they found these people in like public access and like gave them a platform or whatever, but it's the interaction and that's the biggest distinction between what we're doing on the internet with social media, obviously, and what television is. Because if I'm watching television and I see something that a reporter or journalist or whatever, what they have to say, I can't like respond to it, type something out, and actually have the possibility of that person responding back to me. Or like watching other people that say something similar that I would think, and then seeing their response to that. It's in the interaction, and that's what we want. And I feel like when people listen to conversations that are real, genuine conversations, and not something that just feels so staged, that people respond to that. That's why Joe Rogan does so well. You almost feel like you're in that conversation. That's why the people that watch us want to watch us in large parts because they kind of feel like they're in it because they have thoughts, and then they're like, oh, and these are people that they can relate to. A lot of these people on television imagine they can't relate to. Like I feel like the Kim Kardashian show, though I never watched it, though I did watch Trevor Moore's like explanation of it, and really that's all I need. I feel like that's like what's missing there is that people are maybe talking to each other about it, but they don't really feel a true connection. There's like a distance there, and that's like why like a lot of like, you know, hip hop and stuff I would be more into if I found it relatable at all. Like if it like that's the difference between like Jay-Z and Saul Williams or something, or even Sage Francis or something. It's like, dude, who the fuck can relate to Jay-Z? I don't even think people like who are like rich and famous can really relate to Jay-Z. It's like he's like rapping about his particular trip, you know, like the stuff that you share, you want it to be relatively relatable, you know, to some demographic that's not like so exclusive that they don't even have a real connection to it. Does that make sense? It's
Right
like
next
Run
to De Niro,
DMC.
I'll be in the hood forever. I'm the new Sinatra, and since I made it here, I don't know. I feel like I can relate to that one. In New York, no.
In certain things, sure, but I'm just speaking generally, and it's just that the difference between like Run DMC's My Adidas, like, oh, I could afford a pair of Adidas, but if Jay-Z is rapping about this painting that he bought and made his art super expensive when it wasn't before he liked it, you know, I'm just like, I can't.
I want to see like not just like, I want to see like a Kanye like short film, like a 20, 30, 40 minutes, just about Jay-Z and his painting. You know what I mean?
It would be Birth of a Nation with like a hip hop track.
Dude, it could but it could be like because the thing is also.
Sorry, it's too true.
No, I give up. That's a good point. So what about TikTok? It's different in China. They have government oversight. Do you think that they're going to buy and destroy
it's like educational in China? It's like supposedly, like, how true is that? Is that what how do we know that? Like what is TikTok in China like?
People have been saying that TikTok in China is way better, yeah. But also there's regulations on what can be shown in China.
Is it better in what way really? Like that's the thing, is that like
you can't do things in China that you can do in the United States, and you probably couldn't shame yourself the way, you know, like your
right. But I'm like, is that what makes it better? I'm like, I'm always on guard. And it's like that Don Lemon Musk interview that just happened. I'm like, is it? He's like, Don Lemon's over there like saying, I'm not talking about censorship, and he's like, you're literally over here describing censorship by definition and trying to tell me it's not censorship. It's like, you know, you got a blue dog and he's trying to tell you that the dog isn't blue. It's just like, so my thing with the TikTok thing is I'm like, what do they actually have in China? I haven't seen it. So they're like, oh, it's better. Oh, why? Because it's censored. Oh, it's educational. Who's deciding the education? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it a curriculum? Like, is it like a sanctioned curriculum? If so, how in the shit is that better? My fear is the same as most people, I think, with the TikTok thing, is that I'm just like, I don't want to see that precedent set up, where it's like they get to remove something, they get to censor something, and then they're like, oh, open the door to that. We justified it, we rationalized it, and now look at what else they're going to be censored. I know I'm a believer in the slippery slope. You know, even though it's a fallacy, it's sometimes true. So
the British government in the 1960s started producing a lot of television shows, which we are familiar with through reboots. You know, we can think of so many examples, but there's different casts of television shows, and one of the most common, and I mean like for commoners, shows is like a game show. And so you can see like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, The Weakest Link, all these kinds of shows that they released. They were really aimed at the low class natives of England, right? And there's also shows that were designed for educational purposes, even into the sciences. And you can watch British television and be like, wow, you know, they're teaching you how to do chemistry in the morning, and they're kind of recouping lost time for people that were maybe in wartime, they missed some of their education or something happened, you know. I find that to be interesting. Whereas they were building shows to export, which were for their commoners, right? They didn't really export that kind of science show necessarily from the BBC. We could have a society where people were found it easier to have access to media that was like Tavistock mind control to make them smarter. Like there's no reason not to. Instead, we have mind control assets that encourage people to dumb themselves down, to dissipate from reproduction, you know, to not be part of our civilization. And so shouldn't we have a more Starship Troopers approach to TikTok?
Right, but isn't it just like everything all at once? Like TikTok just has like lame board. It's like it's just an open
It doesn't have
platform.
everything all at once because they do censor. So like Britney, for instance, had an account and they took down her account. She had a bunch of really interesting clips of fake news, literally just clips of the news, people saying the same quotes in all these different channels all over America, different times, right? And you know, so there was an effort to squash you know, truther content on TikTok, for sure.
Well, let me know if I got this straight, because my understanding isn't that we're just trying to ban TikTok because it's making people dumber. That's like everyone likes that part. That's the good part of
But
TikTok.
is that really the reason, though?
No.
Like it seems like
the reason, from my understanding, is that we basically want TikTok to sell to a corporation that's based in the U.S., so it's then subject to U.S. laws. Because right now, the way it works is they basically have like a middleman shell company that's based in the US that's just kind of a proxy to the Chinese government. So they're saying, take this TikTok social network, sell it to a company that exists here in the States that we can like have actual control over. And I guess in that case, that scenario, the Chinese government just collects like the ad revenue, but they don't get like a say over where the data's stored and how to like inspect it and use it for all their nefarious. Like that's for us. Like we want Americans to have that.
I like China having that. That's the funny part. Like, so that's a better precedent, right? We shouldn't let American government control corporations.
Dude, I true, but it gets difficult when you're talking about certain expressions of that, because I'll tell you, in fucking 2020, when I had people trying to tell me that we need to be more like China, and that somehow that was like the patriotic condition, like I was just like, what the fuck happened to us? Like I was like, this is total mass hysteria for real.
So
like,
Thomas, imagine you got like you're in a cave and there's a giant monster with sharp teeth, and there's another giant monster with sharp teeth with polka dots. Which one do you help?
I would frame it as a different video game. I would frame
let them both fucking fight each other.
Okay, because the thing with TikTok, like if it was really just a matter of like, hey, this is Chinese spyware, and like we're not down with that, like that would be one thing. But the conversation is all around like dangerous misinformation, or not entirely, but that's a big part of the way I'm hearing it pitched. I'm just like, dude, fuck off with that language. But I'm over it.
I'm imagining it from like the standpoint that the president and I guess whoever he calls in the panic room are essentially playing a big game of Civilization 5 or 6, and that they see that, okay, China is going for the industrial win, and America clearly, we might not be on the military win, but we probably have the culture win in our grasp. But if China is allowed to have TikTok and they can do what they're doing with every other IP and apply that to pop culture, like we're screwed. Like there is no way out of that hole. So in order for America to still win this game of Civ, like we have to go all in for the culture win. And this is one of those things that we can't let up on. Like this is actually a hill we might literally die on if we let China dictate what global culture starts to lean into. That's why the movie Meg 2 is like one of the scariest movies on the planet.
But the content isn't coming from China on TikTok. It's coming from America. And,
but they have control over like if they want to turn this, if they want to turn the hot water up or down, or the cold water up or down, they get to control that. And they get to see what the statistics, what the behavior, they can train AI models on behavior that our companies, I think good old American MK Ultra companies should have better control over our patterns and model after us than the Chinese do.
Okay. Fair point. I hear you. Yeah.
I think that having American corporations have more say hasn't really benefited us yet, and that the Chinese version of the company seems to work better in China. You know what I mean? Like,
dude, like a true ghost child.
No, but like if you go to look at TikTok in China and it's mostly positive things. It's similar to Russian culture. It's against the law. It's prohibited. You know, maybe you have to have at least a Pornhub for nonsensical slapstick content. Like they should have like a pornographic site that isn't pornography. It's just the stuff that you're used to seeing on TikTok that's smutty in general. Like, you know, just people, they're fine. And then that exists, but like you want the main app that people are using to be like, build birdhouses in your, you know, concentration camp, you civilian.
Right.
Like, that's what it should be like.
Because they're going for the industrial win.
Dude, I love it when in the comments that people are just like having their own conversation in part. Like people are just over there like talking about fucking Cory Feldman over there. Like I'm just like,
that's right.
Like
I was thinking about bringing up Cory Feldman just because of that. Do you want to talk about Cory Feldman? Cory's cool. I like Cory.
Sure. Yeah. No. It's
We
not
both went
good
to that
music.
thing, and we met Corey Feldman that night. There was a time.
Oh
when
yeah,
both
you were there. I saw you there. Were you
Yeah,
there that night at the Catalyst?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was a good show. That was a very enjoyable show. Was it good music? No, but he was really authentically enjoying himself. And there was like a couple points when he was talking about Corey Haim and like his whole. Actually, at one point, a couple points, I shouted out Corey Haim like he was Corey Haim. I was like Corey Haim, and he like kind of acknowledged it. It was kind of nice. You know, like I came here to see Corey Haim. But it was there's the controversy surrounding him is so fucking over the top ridiculous. Like I don't even know. Is
his documentary DOA or is it like actually in progress still?
Oh my god,
that was been years in the making. Is that just like he's dangling that carrot for everybody? Like I'm going to expose. It's like just fucking do it. Why not just do it? Is there a reason why he wouldn't just do it? I mean, other than
he did release it. It was made available. You can watch it. It's online.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I forget now, but I think I did. I think I did watch it. But
it must have been a really groundbreaking.
That's the thing. It wasn't. It clearly wasn't as groundbreaking.
Hey, scroll back up. I want to see what it said about 9/11. There. What did it say? The film begins with a recording of. Oh, it's a 911 call. I thought it was 9/11. Okay, never mind.
Right. Yeah. Okay. 9/11 response to it explores the relationship. Feldman names actor Charlie Sheen, registered sex offender Marty Weiss, convicted child molester John Grissom, and Alfie Hoffman, his abuser that sexually assaulted him in Haim. Feldman asserts that Sheen raped Haim during the filming of the 1986 film Lucas, which you might recall.
So was Lucas like supposed to be like what was being referenced in The Wizard? Is there something to that? Because remember that was the guy with the power glove. I don't know. Maybe it's irrelevant.
I mean, there's a lot there. Feldman also claimed that a wolf pack group is after him and working to discredit him. Feldman states that he suspects Judy Haim, Corey Haim's mother, of fronting the group. Child singer.
Oh yeah. So was this an example of like parents pimping out their kids? Is that like so that they could make it in Hollywood? Is that whole thing?
It could be something to that effect. Yeah.
I read an awesome quote the other day with it was probably like some stupid Reddit comment, but I was like, damn, this is such a great point where they said that it's not about the kids in Hollywood necessarily. It's not like the parents that are trying to raise the kids that grow up in Hollywood. It's more that Hollywood's looking for those kind of parents, the parents that are like willing to like drop them off and just come back a day later.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I mean, you know that's the whole point of the vaudeville thing. You get parents that are willing to. I mean, you know, you're gonna make money off your kid. That's already a thing. Your kid's gonna be isolated from the rest of the world, doing like tutors and like this like weird school thing. Like, yeah, you're already in that lot, and it's weird because we've got this mystique around acting that makes people not think that that's what it's always been, right? It's always been.
Word, but isn't the military like that too in a lot of ways? Like military people will like let their children be used for different types of experiments and different things. Like that was like a lot of the people that went through the MK Ultra stuff was like they were like kids of military families. And I think that that's kind of like connected to one of those arguments people make about like the Laurel Canyon phenomenon where all these people came from military families. But then at the same time with that one, I can kind of entertain that there's just like an incentive for people to rebel and reject their family stuff. And so it would make sense if you have a community of people who are all in military families for those to be groups of people, especially if they come from money, because then they have the resources too that to kind of like challenge whatever it is. Like there's like that rebellion factor too. So I don't really know, but where the line is, like it's always kind of a line in the sand with that stuff for the most part, you know. Like I've never been one to entertain the idea in a serious way that Jim Morrison is just like an agent for like the CIA, like that, like Jan Irving stuff, like or you know, Terrence McKenna or these people. Like I can't accept that, and I don't feel like it's a matter of cognitive dissonance because there's plenty of other areas where I come across that cognitive dissonance, and that's
right. Well,
you know,
also agent implies like active participation, right? So it could be more of like not an employed agent salary, they get a badge, but there could be an asset aspect. And even
being an agent's the worst possible job. You want to be an asset, not an agent.
You want to be the asset because then you're not kind of like blood in, blood out, but also as an asset, it might just be more of like you don't get stomped on. Like they might have stomped on you, but then they're like, whoa, you know, this guy might be somewhat malleable. He might actually be helpful in some theoretical. So don't squash that dude out.
But
Squash
also the idea of
Disney out.
having free agency. If you
Mhm.
have your own agent, so being a CIA agent means you don't have free agency. So having free
Mhm.
agency is really important to this. There's a lot of these guys seem like the whole goal was to be like ultra American, to have free agency, to go anywhere in the world with manifest destiny, right? And that kind of
Exactly.
does
Yeah.
to be true to your own spirit. So that is
Mhm.
that's more interesting than just being a CIA agent, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I could totally entertain the idea that, like, in fact, not just entertain, like I would assume such that people were approached by intelligence agency people, or like in various kinds of covert ways and stuff. Like even the Grateful Dead, it's like basically admitted. But the thing is that I can never like seriously like entertain the idea that these people are like working for the CIA. Like I see it more like they may have been approached, they may have even been threatened, they have to navigate it in different ways. How do you yield to overcome with something like that?
I mean,
So
the Grateful Dead's pretty CIA though, right? I mean, like
it's
that's pretty.
super CIA, but at the same time, it's if I'm going to seriously like go there and like consider like all the aspects of it, it's like, dude, they would have to be like, they can't completely go against something, but at the same time, does it mean that they're like just, yeah, they're on that side? Like I can't, I just don't believe it.
But
Not because
what's
I'm
the
hitting
side?
cognitive dissonance, but because it just doesn't make sense, you
To
know?
me, I think it's like the idea that America is one way or another way is clearly not the case. And you have these people that are grown up, especially before the internet, that are raised thinking that they're America. And they're like, oh, well, who are these other people? Oh, well, these are the
Yeah.
guys who live in America, but they're not really American. They're actually anti-American. And
Right.
so there's a cognitive dissonance already, but you grew up loving America and fighting for America. Just your version of America includes acid, like you become,
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference to your vision, a freedom
Yeah.
agency, that kind of thing. American 1960s America was about Ubermensching, giving everyone the opportunity to have superpowers, super substances, super chemical drugs, better living through chemistry, cameras, microphones, skydiving. Like the whole world was different. Like you could just
Right.
people were recording themselves jumping out of planes. Like, come on, like
Yeah.
that's a crazy novelty that was invented in America, right?
Well, if LSD didn't backfire, everyone would be on it. It wouldn't be an illegal substance. Like it was a legal substance that the CIA was actually like, not just the CIA, but that there was this push to like get everybody on this because they're like, we gave it to soldiers and they're out there fucking climbing trees and they couldn't focus on shit. They thought it'd be the perfect distraction. We can go to war, we can do what we want. And this is the thing. I went on that show with you, Thomas. The good guy. What is it?
Secret Society good guys. Shout out to Project
Secret.
Cheney.
Yeah, and there was a lady on there that had the last name Hoffman, and she was a blood relative, if I recall, of Abby Hoffman. And so, like, just responding to that, I was just like, dude, Abby Hoffman is one of those people that I do have every reason to believe he was a genuine variable. The CIA was after him for fucking years, and the FBI, and he's just like. But like that thing with when they surrounded the Pentagon and they were going to levitate the Pentagon and they put the flowers in the barrels of the guns when the military was aiming at them, like I don't believe that was a psyop. I haven't been given any evidence to believe that was a psyop, but it screams a psyop, does it not? So it's like it's a whole issue. It's like I really believe that like when that happened, there was a panic. They were like, oh shit, what did we start? And so and if you look at the timeline, you can see all these examples of them being like, oh well, we pushed for something and now it's like, oh whoa, we weren't really counting on like revolutionaries on this drug. We thought that this drug would just distract. And so like not even though it did too, it does both things. It's just it's unpredictable. And it's that idea that the difference between influence and control, and that's what I come across. Like if you look at like acid dreams, you can see that line in various places where like, oh, here's where they thought they had control, and then they're like, oh shit, we don't actually know what the fuck we're doing.
There's something that just like tickles me to no end about thinking of these military and corporal warlords, right? And they're taking acid for the first time, and to them they're like, oh, you can't think at all on this stuff. This just scrambles your brain. You're just
Right.
completely, and let's give this to everyone, and then you give it to an artist and the artist is like, oh, I can use this to paint something that'll tell everyone the truth about the world and they'll revolt with me, or I can write a song that's going to tell everyone about this whole, secret operation. And that doesn't even cross the mind of these, like, I guess the warlord aspect, because they're so intuitive, like a distraction. They can't even imagine that this could be the thing that turns people against them as well.
Right. Well, if you look at the disclosed MK Ultra files and you do a deep dive with all of that stuff, you come across so many examples where they fucked up, where they had this kind of like serious ambition, and then they're like, "Oh, whoops, that didn't work the way we had hoped." And it's just
Well,
like you know, that's what make.
the,
But it shouldn't be taken as a joke because of that. It shouldn't just be the men who stare at goats and just laughing it off because there's serious shit there.
well, and that's
This
not
isn't
even really MK Ultra. That's like Project Stargate but there's
whatever.
another really nuanced aspect to MK Ultra that I like to point out, and it's a little bit more boring than some of the salacious stuff. But it's that MK Ultra gets so many things lumped into it, so that
Mhm.
Dr. Ewan Cameron, for example, Dr. White that's up in Canada that did the psychic driving, but all these other examples. There's a good reason to believe that at no point did they necessarily know that this was CIA. Ewan Cameron's his own. I think Ewan Cameron probably knew. He was pretty connected. But MK Ultra, for the most part, just meant the government or someone showed up to your classroom and said, "Hey, I like what you're doing. Here's a check for 30 grand. Next
Totally.
time you do something," well, it was more like 3 grand at that time. But
Mhm.
like, here's a check. Next time you publish discoveries, send it to me first, so I can kind of like read through it and I'll ask you questions. And that was all for like a vast majority of quote unquote MK Ultra scientists. They were just getting money that was coming in exchange for giving the information out and not publishing it publicly until they were told like, okay, you can publish it now. And that was the large aspect of it. So the CIA wasn't, in my mind, they weren't going to Dr. Ewan Cameron and saying, all right, kidnap a bunch of divorcees and pump them full of drugs and just put them on
Right.
psychic driving. They were just like, damn, dude, you're crazy. Like, this is some sick shit, but here's 30 grand to just like throw some gas on that fire.
Right. And you can see the point where things shifted, and you can see like Altamont and shit like that, where it's just like, but there's Ken Kesey telling everybody that the acid tests are over, that we're done with that. And that, if you look at that recording of him saying that, you're like, dude, this just somebody told him what to say at this point and was like, nope, pull the plug on this thing as best as we can. We started something that we cannot truly control. And we were, too big for our britches, or whatever you want to say, But
Crazy
yeah.
to think about how much the human mind changed, but also we have all these other substances that they talked about, like Ken Kesey talks about, like AMT and all these other drugs. So, in the last 20 years, there were lots of these psychedelics that were made available, research chemicals, Alexander Strogan, all these things. A lot of them were a lot of fun and safer and interesting nootropic quality, chemicals. But there were so many of them that were banned. So there's the Forbidden Scroll of China, 2007 or 10. Is it 10? Is it 10 or 12? 2012. They banned something. 2007, Japan banned all sorts of research chemicals because of the Japanese Olympics. 2012, China has a Forbidden Scroll because they're manufacturing research chemicals in China, and all of a sudden they say you're not allowed to produce all these things. And then the United Nations starts producing these random bans against drugs with lobbies from pharmaceutical companies. So there's all of these amazing research chemicals which are designed with the purpose of singular pivotal cataclysmic changes instead of catalytic changes, instead of a gradual addiction based substance. All these other drugs are like, take opiates for the rest of your life. Some of these drugs are like, you're supposed to take this once and then you're done with it, right? So it's counterintuitive to the pharmaceutical industry, but there's just so many of these drugs that are better. They're just illegal. There's an entire class of drugs, oh man, that are just like these things that are designer drugs that are open source, essentially. Like, there's an entire movement that exists in chemistry to produce drugs that are not under the control of pharmaceutical companies.
Well, isn't that what STP kind of was as well? Like, when it started, like, that was a designer drug, was it not?
Yeah, SCP is DOM, 2,5-dimethoxyphormethylphenylphthaleamine, which is
So that ties in with the Altamont thing, because that was the first time there was a quote unquote acid test, and people were given STP thinking that they were just going to have an acid trip. And so they have this really intense thing. It smelled like fucking burned rubber. You probably knew Krishna, the old Tibetan guy, used to hang out at Pergolesi and live at 3960. Like, that guy was at Altamont, and I was like, oh, how was it? He was like, oh, it was great. I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, I was in the back. Like it
Yeah,
was a good time. You know, I
well,
just
the
had a
problem,
good time.
problem I find ironic is dosage. Like, so acid doesn't mean LSD, and at the time, a lot of people were doing a lot of drugs that were psychedelics that were all different, varying dosages instead of LSD, particularly barbiturates and things like that. Might be laced with a little bit of LSD or something like that. So people were used to doing larger dosages of drugs, and LSD is one of those drugs where you really shouldn't take like 1,000 doses of it. But
No, that's what happened to Sid Barrett. But
you can do it with less disastrous health effects than other drugs. You can survive it, right? So
totally.
So dimethylmethylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenylphenyl lasts for like 72 hours. The dosage is, not as small in micrograms or something. It's still milligrams, but it's like 2 milligrams, 1 milligram. It's not, if you take 30 milligrams, you've taken 30 doses. So these guys are taking like these little wads of this stuff. They ate probably like 1,000 doses of this drug, and they're seeing people go through their stomachs. Like they were
Right.
like, it was like Philadelphia story, experiments. Like they're not the story. That's a whole different.
The Tom Hanks film.
That's the 90s Woodstock, not the 60s Woodstock. But no,
right. Did you ever watch Philadelphia? You ever watch Philadelphia on acid? Sorry. Somebody in the
Philadelphia story on acid.
Somebody in the comments said, "How did Spielberg get the shot at Altamont?" By the way, it wasn't Spielberg; it was George Lucas. If you go onto Wikipedia, it will tell you that George Lucas was one of the camera people at Altamont. But I got a friend, Jacob Berner, who researched the hell out of it and was able to prove to me that George Lucas got that shot. He's at that camera at that moment. Like he's aiming the camera. So this is before Star Wars. So there's an extremely strong case that George Lucas got the stabbing shot at Altamont. And there's actually a tarp that was there at the moment when the person got stabbed. And people scattered, but there's only like, why is she on this tarp in the middle? It looks, there's all this indication that this was a planned incident, that this is not a complete chaos thing where the Hells Angels stabs that guy. And this was like, they had Woodstock as this symbol that everyone was relating to, is like, it's not just a free concert, it represented freedom, of that there was barely a violent incident at Woodstock with all of these people. It's the largest gathering of people from what I understand on the planet up to that point. And there was like barely an incident of violence. And then it's like you have Altamont, they do this event that's just like at a racetrack, and it's just like it feels like they were like trying to like kind of counteract what had happened with Woodstock, because there was a concern of like everything that Woodstock represented, that they didn't actually, like the powers that be didn't want that. And so I've totally speculated, I'm not the only one, with good reason, that George Lucas got some boon to his freaking career by getting this piece of footage, because you got a giant crowd. How did they get that shot like so straight on, like, and it aired on television? It's a stab scene around the world, right? So yeah, it's very, very odd. And then no one was on acid as far as what was being distributed. So even at Woodstock, you'll hear that when the guy's like, "Don't take the brown acid," it's not poison. People are saying it's poison. It's not poison. It's just not good acid. Well, you had they were just basically doing an acid test with STP and getting people, oh wow, it's not really Mickey there. It's on somebody's shirt. Did Mickey show up?
I see this. It's the same thing, bro. Like that kind of like the way Mickey's on that guy's shirt, sure is on a shirt. But look how much of Mickey is watching. Mickey's watching. It's framed, dude. This is just
right. But immediately where I go with that is that Steamboat Willie came out the same day and year as Mac the Knife in Germany, and so like, yeah, that's weird. Yeah, they wear the same gloves, probably for the same reason.
Joseph, martyrdom of Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph was murdered, right? Like San Jose, get the San Jose thing there with the Hells Angels in San Jose. The father.
Oh, whoa, dude! Somebody in the comments says the ghost ship fire in Oakland was like our underground West Coast Altamont. I've been to that venue before, and it was sketchy. It was a sketchy feeling venue. Like it was weird as hell. And that guy who like ran that place, oh my god, that was so humiliating for him when he was on the television. He's being interviewed by the news, and he was just like confused and like, wait, I'm the bad guy. It was totally an I'm the baddies thing. He was like, wait, we're the baddies. Like he was so thrown off.
I almost went to that that night. I was asked to go bring my projectors. If I had all my equipment there, dude, and I was in like I don't know if I would have been able to get out because you get trapped at the front with the fire.
Well,
and there's no
dude,
way.
There was a bunch of articles.
I just got exhausted. I was like, I should go, but I'm not gonna go. I had this feeling like I shouldn't go. Maybe I'll get in an accident on the way there or something. I'm just not gonna go. And then I was like, wow, like a dozen of my friends are dead, and it was really freaking nuts, you know?
Yeah, I knew a few of those people, and like looking through their pictures and being like, I know that person. I didn't know them well, but they were people who I had partied with.
Right, that's even the worst. Yeah, because you're like, oh my god, all the people that just disappeared that I've seen like all the time and never talked to, even some of them. Yeah.
So there's a New York Times article among several that came out right at the time. And somebody says in the article that like in the middle of it, they were like describing how there was people on the stairs keeping people from leaving, keeping them up the stairs, and that they were shouting about like Mother Nature, like this is all happening for a reason or whatever. Like maybe they're just high as fuck, but even so, like it's just there's extremely suspicious elements of this whole thing. And also that after this fire, they really came down hard on all the people who were living in warehouse spaces. Like this is no longer okay because of a single incident mainly. And it was just like it really affected that people being housed in Oakland and San Francisco and Berkeley.
Tragedy. The worst thing that possibly could have happened because like the homeless population, but it used to be that hipsters and artists, you know, you move into a warehouse that used to be a Wrigley's gum factory. You get like 10 people, and you start with 4, divide the warehouse, and then divide it up, sublet part of their warehouse, and it was cool. You have these amazing art scenes like the Vulcan and everything else, and yeah. It's terrible to see like how San Francisco and Oakland, you know, what's going on with that now.
It feels like so opportunistic, like whether or not this was some conspiracy that was set up to make this thing happen. The opportunism after the fact is so overt. It really reminds me of the Manson shit, what that did to communes, because communes were already being associated with communism. Obviously, that was like the reaction, and then after those events, it was like there's this kind of like it allowed law enforcement to just be like, oh, we don't want a Mansonoid conspiracy thing happening here. And it's like people who were really just trying to live off the land, like some of those communes were really all right, and they really just used that as a means to just shut that shit down, because they're just like, oh, you know, you guys are a cult, you know, they just treat it like cults, you know. I don't know, it's crazy.
Do you know anything going on with Oh, good.
Maybe I was like, maybe rightly so, just because there's a lot of and this isn't going to be like pro off grid, which I respect going off grid, but part of the off grid part, which breeds some of that, is that you no longer get checked by the norms of society. Like if you're not going into town, like after a while, I guess this might be a horrible analogy, but I know that my parents, as I was growing up, they would talk about like so and so, like the wife left them, and you could tell after they've been like living alone for a while, because they'd come to visit and they make like lots of body noises, just like always like clearing their throat and cough, like doing things that normally like over time you would subtly just not realize how annoying you are to other people. And then all of a sudden, if you're like staying in someone's house, it becomes incredibly obvious, like, oh, this dude isn't around people ever, because and it's not really their fault. But now imagine applying that to an entire community where they can just do whatever the heck they want for long stretches of time, and then they have to go and interact with society. And that's the part where it kind of goes off the rails.
In China in the 90s, they had to start teaching people not to spit and blow their nose on the floor, because after the Chinese Revolution, they lost so much civility. And so like the hygiene efforts in China, they're like, no, you can't do any of these things. People have completely lost their sense of how to behave.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there's also the issue of that it's no measure of good health to be well adapted to a profoundly sick society. And so if the society, if people are completely outside, like you're making a contrast between living off the grid and just people who are just like, oh, there are no rules, we do whatever we want. And so you're just dealing with extremes. And so I guess my point is what the Manson family was, even if without the murders, like even if you're just to look at what they were doing at Spawn Ranch, stealing cars and snooping around people's places at night and just being like weird like that. It's like, yeah, that's an extreme. Shouldn't be representative of every fucking commune in the country, but that is what happened with it. It became this is the fear, and it's always like the media was like playing on people's fears and kind of like being like, oh, here's the proof. Like, oh, you were worried about what was going on with the communes. Now you see why this is an issue. So we have to put these measures into place to keep something terrible like this from happening again, which is kind of what we saw with Ghost Ship, right? Whether or not this thing is a planned thing or not kind of becomes irrelevant. It's like the Patriot Act to 9/11. It's like, I mean, I'm a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. I believe that the official narrative of 9/11 is absolute hogwash. Whatever the case, even if I didn't think that, just look at what they did with it. Like, even if you weren't even to entertain that shit, you can still see what they did with that was just, completely messed up, because this then became the excuse for all.
It would have been better if they did a Mandela effect and gaslighted us to think there never even was a Twin Towers. That would have been easier. Yeah.
Right. That could happen actually in the future. Who knows? But like, even
it was
still,
actually FAO Schwartz the whole time.
Yeah.
Right.
George Lucas, you brought him up for a second. He's going to war for Disney against Nelson Peltz. Do you know anything about this story?
Tell me more.
All right. So George Lucas wrote this open letter, talking about Disney in support of Bob Iger. And you know what? This is not the first time I've heard some former Disney files pro Iger. I mean, even
it's pronounced Igor. Actually, it's Igor. Sorry.
Right. Even Tad Stones loves Iger in a sense. He thinks Iger did a lot of good. So I'm gonna, in a weird way, try to reserve judgment, because I've always had my opinions of Bob Iger, but I've been more distant than I'd like to admit to say that I know everything about what really goes on at Disney. Anyway, he's gone on to support him. Says Iger company wages bitter proxy fight against activist investor Nelson Peltz. Activist investor. We'll talk about that in a second. In a statement issued this morning, Lucas said, "Creating magic is not for amateurs. When I sold Lucasfilm just over a decade ago, I was delighted to become a Disney shareholder because of my longtime admiration for its iconic brand and Bob Iger's leadership. When Bob recently returned to the company during a difficult time, I was relieved. No one knows Disney better. I remain a significant shareholder because I have full faith and confidence in the power of Disney and Bob's track record of driving long-term value. I have voted all my shares for Disney's 12 directors and urge other shareholders do the same." So, I mean, I find that interesting that he's pushing for Iger, considering how Disney has done Star Wars dirty. I mean, even done George Lucas Star Wars dirty. He had like prequel scripts and post story, like a 7, 8, 9 script ideas. Like, here's what you could do. They completely threw him away. Didn't do anything to do with his original ideas. Like, why is
it's the Panderverse, man? They're all in for ESG. That's what's missing in the South Park about Kathleen Kennedy. It's like there's something that they're in service of that is not everything that they're projecting it's about. So, I don't know, man.
I mean, it seems kind of crazy to me, looking into also like the proxy battle itself, because they're calling this dude an activist investor. Do you know anything about this Nelson Peltz guy? Have you ever heard of him before? Ever?
I think I recognize the name, but no, I couldn't tell you.
I don't know, not familiar with. So Tryon partner,
like the bad guy from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
He looks like I like him. He has that kind of he just seems like he's got that New York Jewish guy who isn't obsessed with social woke values face to me. Like, when you own your own property and you're Jewish, so you're conservative. Like, he's definitely a conservative. One of the things is he's a Republican. I think that's the big issue here. He's like, he's fine as like PepsiCo, Wendy's, Cisco, all these big things. Heinz. But he also Heinz, which is, on the other side of the skull and bones, but he also supported Trump, right? So that's the thing that probably pushes him again. And this is interesting. So if a Trump supporting conservative guy who likes to make money, most importantly, is involved with Disney's direction, it could only mean making movies that people want to see more, right? Like, isn't that kind of the because woke Woke are willing to sacrifice the money because they have an agenda. This dude's agenda is literally to make money. His panderverse is to pander to your wanting to see a movie with whatever you want to see in it.
Right, but it's a life raft, and what should really be a cause for concern is why does such a huge company like Disney need to pander to get that life raft? What do they know? You know, like the people at the top of Disney. Uh, I don't know, man. That's the thing about it, is that this is in large part to do with basically assuring that should the economy crash, that the banks are going to have your back and you'll be one of the people who are saved. And so like it's like a clephotic version of the 144,000, right? It's like they're like, oh, they don't want to be left behind, right? So it's like, should shit go down, and it's like Disney is among those, along with Bud Light and all of these companies that are so huge, but are like, we're willing to take a loss to suck up to the global system that will ensure their longevity should shit collapse.
This just blows my mind, because it sounds to me like it's the TikTok thing. Like in China, TikTok has to be better. In France, McDonald's has to be better. In Denmark, Coca-Cola has to be better. Why don't we have, I mean, a little bit of fascism wouldn't hurt. Why don't we just clean up these corporations like Disney? And Disney itself is doing it because it's looking at the money and it's saying, look, American audiences only bring us so much money. China brings us more money. We have to make sure our movies can play in China. People have complained and lamented about this. But all that seems to mean is that the movies that they make for China are cleaner cut. Right. I mean, isn't that
right? You know what? I have a big problem right now, because I see like the responses when I discuss like the thing about communes equals communism in people's minds is that there's a big, I'm not to say it's not, it doesn't have its own set of problems, and there's no, I don't have that, I don't share that hippie idealism, and I think that there's a lot of troubleshooting that went on in the 60s and even the 70s. But the thing is that there's a big difference between people just wanting to live their lives their own way in their own communities and be self-sustaining. See, that's the thing about the hippie thing, is that they wanted to be self-sustaining and be completely removed from government. So when people are talking about communism and all these people that just want fucking checks from the government so they can sit on their ass and freaking isolate, like that is such a different conception altogether compared to anything that was the actual general values of like the commune thing. Like the commune trip is in certain ways the antithesis of the communism that people are pushing for today, and it's far from fucking perfect, and it's by no means any kind of solution. But I definitely think that there's something to be said for the government wanting to stamp that out, and the very same government to almost like to want to push this other version of the thing that is going to be so corrupt, like carbon tax, like all this kind of insane shit, just like vaccination IDs and all these kind of things. It's like, dude, this is like nightmare dystopian shit, and that's not what I see from a lot of what existed with the communes. Like people wanting to just live off the land.
Right,
like, if
but
you can fucking manage that. Yeah,
I think that's the dangerous part, though, is that the naivete of that. And I guess maybe I'm a bumpkin when it comes to this aspect of it, but to me, communism in my mind boils down to a bunch of people in a field, and they're like, I'm working for free. Like, you're working for free too, right? All right, as long as we're all working for free. And then
but there's sorry.
But if one dude there is not working for free, and like he's making money off the rest of the people, he just pretends like, oh yeah, we're all in this together, we're all making the same. It only takes that one dude to break down, like if everyone except that one dude is a communist, that dude is making it so that no one's a communist anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, fair point.
Communism isn't supposed to. So Marx said that communism would happen in probably America, and at the end of the 20th to 21st century, once most of the good ideas from the Industrial Revolution, because that revolution usually cycles. There's been revolutions before, and they take a few centuries. Maybe it'll be quicker, but the idea is that most of these ideas from free market enterprise will happen. We'll collect them. People will get their money from their capitalism, but eventually those ideas will be forgotten if they're not saved and automated. And so automation is a major part of Marxism, because the point is we'll be able to turn on these machines and keep them running if they're well regulated. But how will you know which machines to keep running and which ones will keep regulated? And the only ones that can matter are the ones that the community that needs those resources decide to participate in keeping the regulation of. So there is actually a logic to everything that you want to keep running in the 22nd century. You should have some ownership of. That doesn't necessarily mean to be equal,
but this is the same community that might like leave their kids to like starve in the next room while they play Fortnite.
Yeah, but on gross, we say that having lighthouses benefit us because ships would crash otherwise. On gross, we say having roads that are maintained are useful because we're less accidents. And
right, but the lighthouse isn't always necessarily the culmination of the community coming together and voting on the lighthouse over having a water park.
No, but it is something that we end up saying we all need to have. Like the roads are something that are shared, like the Roman road, for instance.
When you say we, I feel like that's an electoral college version of we, like the higher among us, the aristocratic among us determined that we need to have, you know, paint in the middle of the roads, like Collier kind of started in the early, I guess, 20th century.
That's the question about, you know, George Bernard Shaw talks about, you know, what you choose to participate in, because the poor can, the rich can avoid getting the plague until the poor get the plague. So you have to take a certain investment in keeping the poor from getting the plague. You have to take a certain investment to keeping the poor from having potholes in the street because your rich kids might go play with the poor kids and fall in the potholes.
Right. The hippies weren't reading Marx. Like for the most part, I'm sure some hippie somewhere was fucking reading Marx. Exactly.
The CIA
that's the thing is
the Weather Underground to listen to them read Marx.
So it's that association that like I see like the media at the time wanting to establish in people's minds, like that the reaction that the hippies were getting was in large part we want to take this idea of Marxism, which has to do with seizing the means of production. Which, by the way, if people actually do that, if they seize the means of production, that's anything but fucking lazy because they have to run those machines. But I'm not even talking about that, because these hippies had no interest in seizing the means of production. They wanted to go off and do their own fucking thing on their own on land that's like away from the
right.
You know,
they were anti-Marxist and a lot. So you have certain socialist ideas from Engels, and you even have, I mean, the utopian socialist communities in the 19th century were a major influence on Pol Pot. Right, because Pol Pot was thinking for Cambodia, like what we need to do is we need to step away from the industrialism instead of entrapping ourselves in an industrial society. But that's the opposite of what Marx said, because Marx said that we need to sustain, if we want to sustain any of the practices from the phenomena that we're experiencing in this generation. Right. And you can imagine you have the enclosure movement in the 19th century, you have less and less people owning more and more property. You have people moving into cities. All of a sudden, there's enough food being manufactured on grocery. Like, wow, look at all this food, but we don't have enough people in this one city. How can we get this food to these places? Service economies start to emerge, and so Marx is saying, look, we have to figure something out. And Marx isn't even the smartest of his friends, right? But he's the popularist. So it's important. I think Marx is far more important than people realize, especially if you're looking at neoconservatives or you're looking at capitalism, because capitalism. Marxism is a form of managerial theory for capitalism, and any version of it, as much as they will argue that it's not about capital gain because it has to do with sustainable growth is still growth. So even if you have retraction of growth because you're trying to have generational turning points, Marxism is still a form of capitalism.
Right. And so I'm not over here saying that this what the naive hippies were doing was by any means the solution. I'm just saying that there's a big fucking core distinction between what the general aspirations of the hippies were versus what the aspirations or ambitions of Marxism was, and even beyond that. So it's just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm a capitalist, just to be clear. Like, I'm over here, I might sound like I'm, you know, whatever. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate maybe a little bit, but I think that there's important distinctions to be made. But I'm not for corporate welfare. And so, like, that's the thing, is like, you know, I don't understand why like unfettered capitalism is being viewed as that this is just the right thing and this is what capitalism needs to be. It seems so corrupt. So like, I'm for like an uncorrupt capitalism. Good luck seeing that. And the communism, if you wanted to call it that, from like the hippie movement and like, you know, Wilhelm Reich's the sexual revolution and the function of orgasm, like, you don't actually see that. You see a lot of like people making mistakes and troubleshooting, which previous generations did. They did that with drugs. We should take notes from what they saw worked and what didn't. You know, people would take cocaine in the 70s, be like, this is fucking awesome. I can dance all night and I don't have a hangover the next day. What's the problem? And it took like about 10 years for people to be like, oh, there actually is a problem with this. And then even the drugs weren't even the same anymore and other issues arose. But I'm just saying, like, there's this kind of like, we have to go through this process of making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And if you're looking at,
they're the same lesson. So that's what I mean. Like, so Engels never gets credit. We talk about Marx a lot, but Engels said the state, and he wrote half of the Das Kapital, I think, and also the Communist Manifesto. The state is nothing but an instrument of oppression of one class by another, no less so in a democratic republic than in a monarchy, right? Like, this is something I harp on all the time. This is something that's true. And yeah, like, he's considered to be a Marxist, but he's really an Anglican. And the idea also that history of class struggles is important. I mean, class struggle is, to an effect, what is defining whether or not a populace is happy and what's it called, where you're, you know, kept restrained, you know, like placated. When you have a placated economy, then you're not having a violent overthrow of your government. So it's like corporate social responsibility. You have to make sure that your government is feeding people bread and circuses enough that you're safe, right?
Not to poo-poo on Engels. I'm sure he's a smart and a nice guy and everything, but I feel like a lot of those quotes,
probably
like,
a pedophile, you know,
in a heavily like reductionist way. But in my mind, I guess all the state really is, you can even simplify it greater than that, is just acceptable violence. The state is acceptable violence in that it's the one place that everyone's like, hey, we don't think that like killing and hurting people's like the greatest thing, but we do agree on this one set of standards that if someone does these things, then it's acceptable to hurt them, and that's what the state is.
That is Weberian. Max Weber defined in 1918 the state as the monopoly on violence, right? So the state has a monopoly on violence, and I could see that as a truth. I think the only problem with that is it makes it easier to just destroy the state, because then we say, okay, well, if that's all the state is, then we take away their monopoly.
Well, I mean, that's why I said reductionist, because ultimately the same thing is that, like, one of my favorite debates that comes up now is like, we should moderate and restrict AI artwork, right? There should be some kind of regulation. And because I'm just like a weirdo extremist that goes right to the farthest logical conclusion, I'm just like, so if I generate a meme of Pepe that has boobs and like a Taylor Swift head, then I should have guns pointed at my head, literally, because that's what happens, right? First, you get the cease and desist, and you don't do it. And then they start charging you fines, and you don't pay the fines. And then they come to your house, and they say, we're going to repossess. You know, we've got a lien. And you say, well, I'm not leaving. And then the cops come, and they say, well, you have to leave now. And you say, well, I'm not going to. And then they pull the gun. Like all that happens, right? So every time, I guess, what's the quote that every law a criminal creates or something like that?
Every rose has its thorn.
First they came for the AI creators, and I said nothing because I was not an AI creator. And then they came for, you fill in the blank.
But it literally applies to everything. Whenever someone's like, someone should prevent this from happening. And then they came for, you want the cops to show up and point a gun at me, is what you're saying to me, lady.
First they came for the AI creator, and I said nothing, so it was not the AI creator. Then they came for the AI, and I said nothing, so it's not AI. Then they came oh, that's what life is like.
Well, generally speaking, just really quickly, just to make the fine point that it's us Captain Obvious over here, but that the problem is always corruption, and we're over here discussing different systems and what the positives and negatives are of those systems, and it's just like every fucking time is that people have this propensity towards corruption. So it's just like that's it in a nutshell.
Isn't capitalism the one system that takes corruption and like builds it into the system in some way?
No, they all do that.
They all do that in one way or another, and that's why I say like the thing is like if you have like unbridled capitalism doesn't mean what I think it means to a lot of people. Like it's just like it's that bailout shit. Like when GM went down, GM should have just been down. And then Obama was like, no, we got to save
The
GM.
corporate
Why?
welfare,
Because of all the military contracts. And they produced military shit. And it was like, we needed shit like that, like the big monopolized things. If they fail, don't make them fail. But if they happen to fail, don't fucking have the government fucking bail them out with taxpayer money and say, oh, this is no, we should have had the other car companies fucking, we would have a new fucking DeLorean now that actually ran well. You know what I mean? Like,
I do have a devil's advocate to your devil's advocate, though, that if the concept of an egregore is correct, even like a little bit of a chance that an egregore could be a true thing, then corporate welfare also could be a good thing, the same way that welfare for a person. In fact, it might even be more important because an egregore could potentially be greater than the combination of multiple individuals. So
it is, but the problem is
welfare...
the GMC, like the American motor companies, were like, have you ever met these engineers who worked on the electric car for Saturn and all these companies? They hate, like they hate what happened to them, that they worked for that company. You know, like these companies should probably be shattered. Every company should probably be shattered so that there's more say amongst the workers and the proletariat that's interacting with.
Weren't we talking about Boeing last week? I mean, what's going on with that with those workers? It's just like fucking A, man. That's
hi,
like,
I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass. Gets in a Boeing plane. Right. Yeah. That's where we're at. No, I think that we need to get to a point where humans are able to have some participatory say in the thing that they live. I mean, this is what everyone argues about. Like, wait, I love Disney. Well, then you should be able to own a chunk of Disney and vote on whether or not Peggy Sue or whatever.
They're not going to give us they're not going to give us like really alternative energy fucking things. Like, they're going to give us things that that involve scarcity, because you have no control without scarcity. That's why that guy from freaking the professor from Stanford who built the engine that ran on freaking water or whatever, like, it's like that guy's out. Like, there's no, and then all of his work is going to be destroyed, you know. And there's so many cases of that where they just literally just like fucking execute people behind the scenes because they came up with something that would have actually have been like a service for people, that wouldn't have to have this kind of like this really limited resource that everyone's gonna fucking fight over. It's fucking bullshit. So like, on one level I'm like, yeah, dude, keep the fucking oil vehicles. That's what we got. It's what we're working with. Like, whatever. And like, and then you're like getting electric, and you're like, you got coal and all this stuff. But I fucking guarantee you, I'm with what's her name, Dr. Judy Wood, who did Where the Towers Go. I'm just like, you know, that they fucking have these abilities. Like, if they wanted to end this scarcity bullshit, like, we would be living in fucking some, you know, relative version of utopia. But we're not going to get that because there's just too much fucking control. And so
there's too much stability. We need to get rid of the stability, have more chaos. Like, every movie where there's an asteroid or there's like a storm or most of the people die, the military ends up using that stuff. They're like, all right, break out the batteries that don't die, you know.
Exactly because we've had it the whole time.
Yeah,
we just
so
we
took the honor code that we wouldn't use them because it was for the good of society that we kept using which sucks because they're also really bad. Everybody, make sure you guys check out Paranoid American. Have you guys been to paranoidamerican.com? Have you seen his comic books? Because they're pretty good.
You should probably visit this site daily if you're not already.
You should see like how it changes, how it grows. It's kind of like AI. It's becoming itself more and more.
and I got a big announcement on the 22nd. That's this Friday. Chosen One is finally freaking launching. After all the carrot dangling, it's finally gonna happen. So yeah, chosen1.com. You can grab. And I was just talking to Juan right before I jumped on here about some really cool little perks and handmade items. We're gonna have like a little homunculus kit and caboodle, so it's going to be kind of cool.
This is exciting. All right, and make sure you guys check out the summer catalog, and then also what's up with your Paranoid American History 101.
So this is actually the best introduction to Paranoid American in general. If you're not sure, you want to kind of get the Whitman sampler of conspiracy theories, this is the one. It's got 8 different stories by 8 different writers and 8 different artists, so it spans from Skull and Bones. There's a story in there about the Iran-Contra / crack scandal. Ooh. There's one about Orson Welles and War of the Worlds perhaps being part of like a Rockefeller operation. There's one about Charles Lindbergh maybe killed his own kid because of eugenics, and he was just big into that. It's got a little bit of a sampler for the upcoming NASA book. It's got like a few scenes, I think 2 or 3 scenes from NASA baked into it. Yeah, and the Mulholland's Manual is one of my favorite ones that I don't talk about enough, but this is one of the real stories about John Mulholland, who was a stage magician that got hired by the CIA to teach their agents sleight of hand tricks so they could easily slip LSD into someone's coffee, for example. And this actually got used by lots of agents in the field. So I could keep going. This is one of my favorite anthologies. This is the first thing that I ever published in detail. So,
Thomas, that happened the other way too. I talked to somebody who was involved with somebody who basically dosed a was he a federal agent? He was somebody who was about to basically do a hearing against somebody who had distributed a bunch of acid in the 60s, and they like basically poured half a vial into their drink when they met with them at a bar, and the person they were undercover with this other person, but they didn't know that person knew who they were. And so like I could dig up some more details on that, but that kind of shit has totally happened. And then years later they're able to talk about it, but they couldn't talk about it for a long time. So like my friend who shared it with me, he's like, I haven't been able to share this for years because he didn't want, and the person's now passed that did it. And so he's like, well,
picking up tables and throwing them like frisbees, screaming, luckily for you, I've got a developed tolerance. That's exactly.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't able to do the hearing it was the following day. And so he was high as fuck, and it just like it basically ruined his career. And
that happened to my 8th grade art teacher too.
See, on a low enough dose of STP or DOC.
No, not me. I didn't do it.
On a low enough dose of STP or DOC, you can totally go to court. I remember thinking like, wow, that kid, he looks like Powerpuff Girls with his eyes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Eye statements reversed. Make sure you guys check out Paranoid American. Go to where'd he go? MK Ultrasound 723 David Charles Plate. You can also click on the syncbook.com directly through his site, which will take you to his Synchromistic musical video audiovisual research. I just watched the Love Witch one because I recently rewatched the Love Witch, so I thought, hey, Way's Blood.
Oh, nice. The director of this movie really likes this sync. And so she follows me on Twitter, and she shares really cool stuff. She writes really cool like gothic novels and stuff, and she's really funny. But yeah, so the Wise Blood and
amazing movie, beautiful movie, great with the soundtrack. But if you go to David's channel and you click on, this is an ad, crazy. If you go to, I thought I didn't have any ads because I paid.
It's highlights, by the way.
Okay, highlights. Media's cool, but yeah, go to highlights, and then you can find Eminem with Fantastic and Johnny Mnemonic with White Zombie.
Fanatic, yeah. But yeah, I don't know how many videos I actually have on Twitter now. I feel like it's over 100, but yeah, I have over 200 on the website for streaming and download for free. So if you want to check those out, I recommend.
Super, super sweet, dude. Thanks. Nova.com. Check out all my other videos, and I love you.